Gym sessions and sweaty summer activities are back, which means more funky smells in your clothes because sweat leaves behind bacteria that causes those hard-to-remove odors. Clorox fabric sanitizer products are ready to zap the stink out of fabrics in your home by getting rid of 99.9% of odor-causing bacteria. Eliminate odors in every load or sanitize fabrics between washes with one of our fabric sanitizer products. Search fabric sanitizer at Clorox.com to learn more. When it counts, trust Clorox. Use as directed.
Now back to Ian Furness on Seattle Sports Radio 950, KJR.
Before we get to our next guest, can somebody remind me, not Jackson, to just hit me up on Twitter, at Seth_Everett. I put a bottle of water in a freezer. And I'm going to forget about it. It's going to be a solid block of ice. Can somebody just remind me? Somebody just remind me. You just hit me up and just say, dude, your water's frozen. Like it's super hot, and the water was in my car, and I didn't put it in the refrigerator. I put it in the freezer, and it's just I'm going to forget about it. That's the issue. 49451, by the way, the text line. But don't remind me about my frozen water on the text line. Do it on social media. That's what social media is really for. Do we have Joe here? We do. Okay, cool. Joining us now here on 950 KJR is our buddy Joe Fan. You've seen him on television. He's very fancy on television, but he's a big friend of the radio station, and he's on here all the time, and he's joining us now as well. Joe, Seth Everett in our studios here. Welcome, and nice to talk to you, man. I've been a long-time admirer.
I appreciate that, Seth. Same to you, man. It's great chatting with you. Thanks for having me.
That sounded really dirty, and I didn't mean it that way. So just understand the context in which it was intended. There's two holdouts for the Seattle Seahawks, and I could argue which one's more important. I know Jamal Adams is the better player, but I would think Brown, the offensive lineman, is more important. What he's looking for with leg injuries and his advanced age at 36 years old, but man, that line without him has a big gaping hole. Let's do Brown first. What's your thought on the Seahawks' play here? Because does their need outweigh all the potential pitfalls?
Honestly, my opinion is pretty much the same on both. They can't afford to go into week one without either of them. They need to be at full strength. This is an absolutely critical season for this current era of Seahawks football. They have got to be at full strength, because if they're not, there's a good chance they start off this season slowly, which is something they can't afford in what is, in my opinion, the best division in football. And so you got two tough games coming up to start the season. And it looks today, as it was reported, that Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson are trending towards playing in week one against the Colts. And then in week two, they come home and play the Titans. And so those are huge games. You can't afford to lose both. You have to at least split at worst. And so they're not in a situation to where they can go into that game without either one of these players who are certainly top 10 players. But you look at Brown's case, like you said, they don't have anyone to replace him with. Jamarco Jones, who's also hurt right now, and then you have Stone Forsythe, a rookie. I don't think you want to throw a rookie to Russell Wilson's blind side. And we know all in all season long, Russell Wilson was making the comments about tired of getting hit too much and wants a better offensive line, all of that. And I mean, can you imagine how upset he will be if Dwayne Brown is not protecting him in week one? It would fracture the relationship once again, and it would be just a terrible way to start the season in terms of a vibe and a culture standpoint. So I understand the Seahawks are usually a team that plays hardball, and they don't like to bend to the will of their players. But they're in a situation here where they sort of have to in both instances, or else they're risking upsetting their quarterback from the jump. And like I've said many times, this is a season where it's make or break in terms of Russell Wilson's future in Seattle.
Yeah, Russell Wilson's influence notwithstanding, but if you move to Jamal Adams, I covered Jamal Adams when he got traded. I was covering the New York Jets, and this conversation literally happened 76 times. Everyone knows he wants to be the highest paid safety in football. He has wanted that for 3 years. What is the Seahawks play here?
a good question. Again, it sounds like they're trying to play hardball, and they have an offer out that is not up to Adams'
But did they trade for him thinking he was going to be right? But did they trade for him thinking that he was just going to be enamored with the city and Russell Wilson, and he was going to drink the Pete Carroll Kool-Aid and just say, "Okay, I love this. This is a loud stadium. This is great." Like, he's doing everything he did when he was with New York.
I would be shocked if the Seahawks were that naive. I mean, I would just be floored. There's just no way. They've been in this game too long to be that naive and think that their program is going to, get a guy to, off of his number that he's looking for. And so it's very reckless what they're doing right now. And that's why one of the biggest critiques of the trade, whether you thought it was worthwhile or not, was that there wasn't a deal agreed upon at the time of the trade. This is not a surprise to anybody. The second the trade was made, you knew this guy was going to play 1 year, and he wouldn't think about playing on his fifth-year option. So no one should be surprised about what's happening, what's taking place. This has all been foreseeable since that trade was made July 2020. So, I mean, I don't have a lot for you there in terms of the Seahawks are trying to stick to their guns, and it's very silly, and it's putting unnecessarily poor publicity out there on this team and a lot of pressure on them to get the deal done. I don't know how it's going to go. And that's why I've said all offseason, even after mini camps and going into the summer break, just because Pete Carroll says he has faith the deal is going to get done, you can't take it to the bank until it gets done. This is a very unique scenario for a player who's very much a one-of-a-kind safety, and he wants to be paid as such, where the Seahawks are going to want to stay much more towards what the safety market is. So, and they're already 2, first-round picks at a sunk cost deep. So their hands are tied, and to me, Jamal Adams holds much more leverage in this situation.
One last thing on Jamal. You are a lot closer to him. I found him to be really charming. And I liked when he used his notoriety to step up when a lot of NFL players were doing so for good causes and such. I was very impressed with Jamal Adams because, everything you read about him is that he's a me guy. What was your dealings with Jamal? And granted, he's been only acquired in the pandemic, so every conversation you may have had with him has been on Zoom. And I just kind of wonder, what was your takeaway then on the deal? Because my takeaway from a distance was, well, unless they sign him, this is a dumb trade.
Yeah, you asked me a couple different questions there. First of all, I like Jamal. I think Jamal's fantastic. I think everyone that plays with him really enjoys him. You never heard anything bad from a player or coach about Jamal Adams. And so, I'm not a subscriber to the me thing. I think this dude is an ultimate competitor. I think, there are certainly some tendencies of this guy is certainly in his Twitter mentions and knows what people are saying about him and very, I would say image conscious, but, and he's got the Russell Wilson cliches he'll throw out there, but this dude loves ball and this dude loves playing. He wants to be their first team. He's hyper competitive, wants to win championship. So again, this is all this, and what he's doing right now isn't rare. You look just down south into San Francisco, George Kittle would have held out last year. Fred Warner would have held out this year. Both those guys got paid. So, this isn't just Jamal is pulling this stunt when, other players just go out there and play on their fifth-year option. This is not rare for guys not to play the final year on their rookie deal when they've become market value-wise so much more valuable. And as for the trade, I was someone who was a believer in the trade. I think it was made out of a little bit of desperation, but I also looked at it from a standpoint of their defense did not have enough blue chip talent, not even close. And so they had to make a move of some sort, and they chose that one. And for me, that made a lot of sense. I get it. And so I think Jamal Adams is a special player. I'm certainly more in on Jamal Adams than many others. But I thought it was a fine trade with the caveat of getting him signed. But they haven't done that yet. And this all seems like it could have been avoided a long time ago.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Joe, continued success. Thanks so much for doing this. And we gotta talk more, not less. Just make sure we talk more. Deal?
Appreciate it, Seth. Really thank you. Thank you for having me, man.
Headlines and hot takes, they have their place. But at our podcast, ESPN Daily, we don't just skim the surface of sports. Dude, I mean, this clearly transcends blood feuds, rivalries, sports. This is something far, far deeper than that. I'm your host, Pablo Torre, and every day we try to dive into the stories behind the athletes.
The picture of him in the dugout afterwards just looked like a guy who'd had his heart ripped out.
Listen to ESPN Daily wherever you get your podcasts.